Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast in which two friends who are both geeks of a certain age journey back in time to when we were much, much younger and re-experience how we discovered everything geeky, how those elements of geek culture became modern mainstream culture. Grab a bowl of Captain Crunch cereal. I'm your co-host, Tom Grant.
I'm your co-host, Stephen Taylor.
And I forgot to say we were geeks before it was chic. And this episode, we are going way back in time. In fact, arguably, this should have been our first episode, because we're going to go back to when we were children watching cartoons. And these are very geeky cartoons, as you'll hear.
Although, if we're going to be honest, some of that geekiness extends well into high school, if not early college, but that's okay.
Yeah. But so like one of the questions that we're going to ask ourselves today is to what extent these cartoons shaped our tastes
Right.
as we grew older, as we were teenagers and young adults. But before we get into the topic of the day, the geeky cartoons of the 60s through the 80s, what have you been doing lately that falls under the aegis of geekiness?
All right, so this is going to be a little different. So what I realized, so 2 episodes ago, we introduced the T and Geometer, I guess, from the good episode, meh episodes, and bad
Yeah.
episodes. And it occurred to me at some point recently as I was playing golf that in some ways my golf game is TNG season one. It's it's a series of there are a couple of good holes,
Yeah.
quite a few meh holes, and too many bad holes. So now it's almost like sort of a golf version of Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Is this a Heart of Glory hole? Is this that's a bad statement. I shouldn't have said it that way. Is this whole a Heart of Glory?
There you go.
Or is this whole a code of honor? And there are way too many codes of honor in my life. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Taking those balls into the woods and hitting the water. It's not good. So
you
that
had
is
this was a geek overlay
geek overlay,
on reality, augmented geek reality.
as often happens. Yes.
Yes, well, it happened to me because I just to go off topic here for a second, like when I used to play board games a lot, including tactical war games based on World War II,
Yes.
was sort of a favorite. I would look at a building that I hadn't seen before and think, "Why, that's highly defensible."
Yeah. There you go.
So anyway, it's inevitable.
Yes, it
I have these. So listeners, you can't see this, but I have these new role-playing game devices. So one of them is this really cool dice tower that is a wooden block. It's cherry wood. It's custom made. I found it at a store near where I live, and you kind of pop it apart and stack it up, and there you go.
I
It's
see. Yes.
easy to store, quite attractive looking. There's a cat on the front of it, and also I got metal dice, which is something I've always been intrigued by. So I got these interesting metal dice that have sort of a TNG look to the font and sort of the background in general.
Mm.
But what I didn't know is that in direct sunlight, the kind of the shading around the numbers is purple, and outside of direct sunlight, it's blue.
Are the numbers in the tongue of Mordor?
I don't know. Good one. But anyway, that was my most recent geek purchase.
There you go.
All right. So we usually start every episode, or we always start every episode with our choice of soundtracks that we can't afford because we don't have a budget for this show. But if we
Right.
did have a soundtrack,
We
for
have a
today's-
negative budget. We have a negative budget.
We definitely. If you had, your druthers, what would you choose as the soundtrack for this episode?
So I'm going to go with the Starblazers theme because it's always stuck in my head for all these years. And also, I'm a sucker for a good opening sequence that tells you what the show's about without you get the whole idea right there from the visuals and the song. And that song is crazy. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I picked the Space Ghost theme.
Sure. That's good.
Which I thought was the best of the Hanna-Barbera superhero themes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because as we'll talk about, I didn't watch the Japanese import cartoons that you did.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't have a strong opinion, but I really also as a metric, the Space Ghost theme has stuck in my head
Hmm.
in probably an unhealthy way after listening
Undoubtedly, yeah.
to all the theme songs back and back, where the other theme songs kind of just like dribbled away from my
Right.
consciousness.
Fair enough.
All right. So let's get into cartoons of our youth. And
Yes.
yeah, as an introduction, why are we doing this episode? Why are we doing this episode? So it is because cartoons really were the starting point for a lot of geeks, not just of our generation and others. Do you think that's a fair statement?
I mean, I think sort of definitionally, I mean, there's a lot of, and I was thinking about a lot of the cartoons, including some that we're not going to really talk about directly, but there is a lot of geek elements in a lot of cartoons. And so I'm sure that's a gateway drug, if you will,
Yeah.
into broader geekery.
Yeah, I mean, introduce you to the sorts of stories we found interesting: superhero stories, science fiction stories,
Yeah.
fantasy stories.
Hmm.
And there was also, we were going to talk about something distinct about the cartoons we watched when we were young that we will eventually get around to kind of comparing them to more contemporary cartoons. Not saying that contemporary cartoons are better or worse, but just I think that there was something distinct about these cartoons. Um, so I also want us to kind of explore a little bit our experiences watching cartoons, which is a definitely very different experience than kids these days and their cartoons. Uh, so what was your cartoon watching experience like when you were young?
So cartoons were maybe in three categories. It also depends on what age we're talking about, right? I mean, one, we are talking here, I think scarcity may be the word to start with, in the
Yeah.
sense that there were prescribed times at which you could view cartoons. Saturday morning, of course, that we're going to talk about quite a bit, was the most significant cartoon-rich environment, as all three broadcast networks would introduce new cartoons and rerun old cartoons that seemed new to you because you were a kid.
Right. It was the anchor of cartoon.
Yeah, and then there was after school cartoons, and some of important cartoons to me were on after school even as a young kid. Again, one we're not going to talk about, but I mentioned in the podcast before, was Speed Racer. That was a late afternoon cartoon, even before I
Right.
was in school. And then there might be specific moments in time when cartoons are on, like when I was a child, a small child, preschool child. Um, there was 30 minutes of Looney Tunes cartoons on Channel 11 in Dallas, and that was
Hmm.
that was I can't remember, it had a name. And those were my cartoons, right? That was like my car, and then there's because it was a void. Maybe you got to watch PBS stuff in the morning as a small child,
Hmm.
Sesame Street, Mister Rogers, and then there was like adult shows on, like soap operas or the news or whatever. And then there was this
Right.
30 minutes of cartoons at noon, and then I had to wait until like the after school time frame for other things to come on. In fact, one of my formative, I think I may have mentioned this before, but my formative political science memories is Watergate, because Watergate interrupted my cartoons because my mother wanted to watch the Watergate hearings and I wanted to
Hmm.
watch Cartoon Carnival. That's what it was called, Cartoon Carnival at noon.
Your
And
mother was a monster.
it's just terrible. So anyway, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So
How
there were
about
these.
yourself?
Yeah, so it's the same thing. I mean, there was some fixed time slots. I was probably more of a Saturday morning cartoon kid, and that really did sort of anchor your watching. And
Yeah.
I think at the time there was all sorts of concerns about kids watching too many cartoons or the cartoons being too violent. So cartoons would rot your brain, but they would only rot your brain between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Saturday. And I wasn't a real big afternoon cartoon watcher the way you were. I occasionally would catch something that was on. I mean, you mentioned
Are you,
like
are you saying that
Speed
my
Racer.
brain was more rotted than yours? Is that what you're telling me?
No, not at all.
To me, I guess it was almost two categories in my mind. Like the new cartoons, the new stuff was Saturday morning, and then typically whatever's other was more like older reruns, so to speak. I don't
Yeah.
know. It was the way to encounter new things were mostly on Saturday. Although that changes somewhat later, I guess. But anyway,
Yeah, and
there you
the
go.
Saturday morning cartoons from the three networks were
Hmm.
part of the TV schedule season. So
Yes.
after you finish summer vacation, the new season of cartoons would start,
Yes.
and some cartoons would continue, some cartoons would be gone, and new ones would replace them. And the afternoon cartoons, like if you were watching Speed Racer or Kimba the White Lion or something like that, those seem to not be particularly bound by time at all. You just had
Right.
a rotation of
That's right.
episodes that they kept
That's right.
running in perpetuum. I also say that the Saturday morning cartoons we'll be talking about were were produced at a time that was pretty psychedelic for television. And that was
Yeah. Oh,
true
yeah.
both of the cartoons that we'll be talking about and also of sitcoms. It was a weird era for sitcoms. Like, let's have a sitcom with a genie. Let's have a sitcom with a witch. Let's have a
Sure.
sitcom with astronauts who go through a time warp and land in the time of the dinosaurs. Or My Mother the Car, or just these other
Mr.
wacky
Ed.
ideas.
Well,
Mr.
that
Ed.
was a little earlier, but
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
Wilbur. They were just bizarre in a way that I
And
think future generations of sitcoms never were.
since it's only I well, so I don't forget, there is a Mr. Ed tie-in to today's conversation. Do you know what it is?
Oh, no, I don't. What is it? Wilbur.
So it is Wilbur, as a matter of
It's
fact.
Wilbur.
So Alan Young, who played Wilbur on Mr. Ed, is also the voice of Seven Zark Seven and Keop on Battle of the Planets.
That's a very deep cut.
Hey,
Well done. Well
that's why
done.
you come to Ancient Geeks for nonsense that's so helpful and interesting and informative. But yeah, that
Anyway,
was yeah, it's
well,
crazy.
so let me go back to the after school cartoons, which I
Hmm.
think I like when I was really young. I watched the Electric Company, those educational
Yeah,
cartoons
it's
occasionally.
PBS.
That was
Yeah.
PBS. And did you watch the cartoons before or after you did your homework, Stephen L.
Um,
Taylor?
huh. I think probably a little bit of both. I think really before, because cartoons were when you first got home from school. And I don't think I really had a whole lot of homework until a little deeper into life. So did
Yeah,
you have to
we.
like wait? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me, man. A lot of times I would do my homework while I was at school.
Well, yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, our generation was not overburdened with homework the way that unfortunately future generations of school kids have been.
Well, look, yeah. And look how undereducated the two of us are. Anyway,
I know, yes.
the
Gosh, we had
I
it easy.
I think that I remember having some level of homework into a bit later elementary school.
Mhm.
And of course, I've shared with you before, and maybe on the podcast, I was enough of a nerd that I listened to NPR while I did my homework. So, that's the kind of weirdo I was. But I feel like we were allowed to watch TV as long as we got our work done. I never had a prescribed time. So I think we
Mhm.
would come home, typically, we would watch TV. And it was some combination of reruns, the Brady Bunch that my sister insisted on watching, um, or,
I
other
sense an
sitcoms.
edge of resentment in your voice when you
There
say
was some resentment, especially when at one point in our lives, the Brady Bunch was on back to back on two different channels. So it was like an hour's worth of Brady Bunch. I'm like, I can't take this anymore.
that will rot
Uh,
your brain.
yeah, and then other like I Dream of Jeannie Bee, which shows you mentioned before. There was a constant sort of cavalcade of reruns in our youth from the '60s and the '50s to some degree, but also the cartoon. So a mixture of the two. And then we would do our homework before dinner, typically, and that was kind of that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get into a little background on the cartoons. A little more background. I don't want us to kind of spend too much time on background because we've got a lot of cartoons to talk about. The Japanese imports really became big in the 1980s, and
Hmm.
there's a guy Carl Maychek who was kind of pivotal in bringing these cartoons to the U.S. They were often, of course, they were dubbed, but also they were to some extent rewritten.
Yes.
from the Japanese original stories, and we'll get into some of the
Some more than
specifics of
others, but
that.
yes.
Yeah, some more than others. This is a time when anime fans, the people who are watching Japanese cartoons, were they'd started to become a distinct group of geeks. That there were places you had to go before they were broadcast on television, or like individual ones that let's say weren't broadcast on television, like maybe Starblazers was on, but some other Japanese import wasn't, where you had to like go buy videotapes and so forth.
Right.
So availability was a little bit of a question, aside from being in, kind of the syndicated television zone of Channel 11, or in the Texas market, or Channel 13 in the
Hmm.
California market. Um, you mentioned Speed Racer. I mean, there were
Yes.
other precursors to the sort of cartoons, Starblazers,
Hmm.
Robotech, and so forth that we're going to be talking about, in the sense that they were either animated cartoons about science fiction subjects, or just Japanese cartoons in general, kind of getting people used to that style of animation and that style of storytelling. Or there were actually like children's shows that were live action that also hit some of the same beats as these cartoons. So I'll mention Gigantor, the space age robot. He's at your command. Kimbo the White Lion. I mentioned Johnny Sacco, which was a live action show where a kid had control of this giant robot. And spoiler alert: in the last episode, the giant robot gets destroyed in a heroic act of self-sacrifice, which apparently was quite devastating for a generation of children. And Speed Racer, and anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, these were on. It felt like they were on sort of randomly, like,
Yeah.
you could, like, if you were a fan of Johnny Sacco, very easily it might go off the air after being run for a year and then not appear for you until years later.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard of Gigantor and Kimba. I don't know that I've ever heard of Johnny Sacco before this conversation. I don't think I've ever seen any of them. I think these were all basically, it's the exigencies of syndication, right? We've talked before a
Right.
little bit about some shows that you encounter more than I did as a kid, just because the local channel decided to buy that show and put it on at a time that was conducive to
Exactly.
you watching. So Speed Racer, I think I think it was Channel 11 also. It was probably 3:30 in the afternoon, something like that. Prime right after school time ish. But I remember watching it before I was in school, and then it was on for a long time after.
Yeah.
Um,
And there were very simple stories, and very simple concepts. Speed Racer had a car. The car could jump.
it wasn't just a car, Tom. It was the Mach 5, and it could do all kinds of really cool things. And I'm not going to stand for this Speed Racer erasure.
Rich. I have blasphemed, and I am
That's right.
penitent.
That's that.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Gigantor did have one of the best theme songs of any cartoon. It's extremely memorable. So the Hanna-Barbera cartoons we'll be talking about, they came out again when Saturday morning cartoons were a big deal for a generation of children, and then Saturday morning cartoons went away.
I really, and I meant to ask my. It's funny because I did ask my kids. We'll talk about this later about what cartoons they remember watching, and my oldest son referred to Saturday morning cartoons, but he meant that as a category, like Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. I don't know though
Yeah.
that there were, and I meant to ask him if he remembered specific Saturday morning cartoons. I think surely by then, which we're talking about the early 2000s, that was not a thing. I know that it was a thing, including like you described. Not only was it part of the TV, you know, the TV schedule that we used to live with, where the fall was
Right.
always a new show. They used to have like full page ads in the TV guide or in the
Oh,
newspaper about what was
absolutely.
coming out. They would have shows that were going to preview what the cartoons were going to be, and that clearly persists until at least early to mid 80s. And but I'm not sure when it totally peters out after that.
Yeah. So my apologies to fans of the obvious cartoons of the 1980s that I had erased. There I go
Well,
erasing again, like
well,
G.I.
some of
Joe and
actually a lot of the Super
Transformers.
Friends ones that were
Yeah.
available on YouTube were really from the 80s. They don't,
Yeah,
I
from the
couldn't,
80s.
they're not from the, I mean, that show dates back to the early 70s we'll talk about, but they're not available on YouTube. You have to buy them when I
Yeah.
wasn't so inclined. But
Well, anyway, back to the 1960s.
yeah.
So that was kind of the landscape. You would have like this mix of animated shows as well as some live action shows. The Banana Splits.
Yes, that was
Talk of
also bizarre.
good. Yeah, that was very bizarre, and also had a theme song that stuck in your brain.
And for me, that was actually an after school show. It was not, I was not on Saturday morning when I was watching.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned Looney Tunes. I remember that there were like there was a slot always for like Looney Tune repeats. So
Yes.
like the cartoons that were done in the 1950s would,
Hmm.
in the 60s and 70s would always be available through
Hmm.
the regular Saturday morning cartoon schedule. At this time, Hanna-Barbera made this decision. This Hanna-Barbera is a company, obviously, that they would make these offbeat superhero and adventure shows. So Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, and others that we'll talk about. A really kind of important figure. There was a comic artist named Alex Toth, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. That's not Toth, it's Toth. Anyway, who was sort of the showrunner of some of these cartoons. He certainly had a big hand in the artwork and character design of heroes and villains in these shows. There were actually more of these than I remembered. So we're going to only focus on a few of them, but there was above and beyond the ones we'll talk about. There was Shazam, Birdman, Young Samson, Dino Kid, Mitor, the Galaxy Trio, and an incarnation of the Fantastic Four.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so what did we watch? We watched Space Ghost, the Herculoids, Johnny Quest, Super Friends, and then from the those were the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and then the Japanese imports, Battle of the Planets, Macross. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Macross. I think it's
Macross.
Macross.
It's Macross,
Robotech. The Macross
and
saga. Yeah.
Starblazers.
Our Starblazers.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. No,
And so I had not seen the Japanese ones before.
hmm.
I mean, I've seen lots of
Sure.
Japanese, you know, movies, and including some animation over the years, but I hadn't seen these specific things, even though they were huge, right? That was always like
Right.
interesting. It's like, what do people see in this that, I might be interested in? I just never got around to
Well,
watching.
I wonder the degree to which part of it, I think, at least in terms of Robotech, Macross, the Macross saga is going to be, that's an age thing. Because we'll talk about when the stuff was on later. And I think that
Yeah.
Star Blazers may have been the exigencies of syndication, right? Because again, it was on Channel 11 makes a lot of appearances in my life apparently, but it was on. That's when it was on in Texas, and I think
Hmm.
we moved. I didn't get to see some of it because it wasn't on in California when I moved to California. I don't in '83. So anyway, if I'm getting my time frame right. Anyhow,
Right.
I've digressed you. Go ahead.
No, no, it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, so those are the ones that we watched. There were many others, as I mentioned, but these are the ones that we focused on. In part because these are the ones that we watched. I mean, we both
Sure.
definitely watched the Super Friends. Did you, when you
Oh
were a kid,
yeah.
watch the other ones, Space Ghost, Herculoids, or
So yeah, I
Johnny Quest?
mean, Super Friends was a mainstay of Saturday morning cartoons, and it was one of my favorites at the time.
Is the
Um,
Justice League?
yeah, I simply had to call it Super Friends for some weird reason, which actually even annoyed me as a child.
Because it's a dorky name.
It is. Why don't you just call it the Justice League? That's cool. I Space Ghost and the Herculoids. I know that I watched, but it was again this one that few years of difference in our age makes a huge difference, right? Because it
Yes.
was
Yeah.
originally on in the '60s, and it was. I'm really not. I'm starting to watch independently watching, getting up to watch Saturday morning cartoons probably somewhere around 1972, right?
Hmm.
So I'm 5 years old, and you can find Space Ghost and the Herculoids, but it's often in some sort of weird rerun situation. So it's
Yeah.
either some recycled show. And I do remember at one point, and I meant to look up when this was, because it's one of those that sticks in your. It's funny how these things just stick in your head. At one point, there was a version of Space Ghost, which was just recycled the old Space Ghost, but it was the pairing was Space Ghost and Frankenstein Jr. So I still have it in my head
Yeah,
the
that's right.
sound of Space Ghost and Frankenstein Jr. 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 I don't know why it echoed, but anyway, it's funny how
Why
these
not?
things. Why not? And so that's when I would have seen Space Ghost, and the Herculoids I think I caught later. Sometimes there's this weird phenomenon too where they would rerun this stuff on like some random channel on Sunday would have old cartoons on instead.
Hmm.
But not, amidst the news programming and church services on Sunday, maybe one channel mercifully had cartoons on. If you happen to be home watching cartoons at that point, um, but anyway, I know I saw it, but I don't. I was never like super steeped in it. And Johnny Quest is again one that I saw. I think probably after school reruns. I was never deeply into Johnny Quest, although I thought it was fine. Um, I was more of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons that we're talking about, Super Friends. But if you look at a list of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, it's immense and long, and there are various iterations of, various kinds of crime-solving um, groups of kids running
Hmm.
around, sort of
Pesky kids.
Scooby-Doo-esque, pesky kids, and other kinds, lots of different shows and various stuff that I'd forgotten about, but like remember Adam Ant.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, which is sort of a superhero thing, and there's a bunch of lots of cartoons.
Okay, so for each of these cartoons, we're going to go through first an elevator pitch, and just like how would you describe this to somebody who had no idea what a particular cartoon was? Uh, we'll talk about, because we're going to devolve into the language of our youth, what was cool and what was lame.
So every week we have a new measurement system. Anyway,
Okay. And here I was just very recently saying that all the super beings of the Star Trek universe, in the original series especially, needed to have an established standardized testing regime,
yes, yes,
some
yes, yes.
standardization among them,
Yeah,
and here I am making up a new
yeah.
testing method altogether.
All together.
I'm
Oh
just a
well.
big fat hypocrite. Okay,
Anyway, moving right along.
moving right along. I erase people. I'm a hypocrite. I'm a terrible human being. Okay, so let's start with Space Ghost. Space Ghost.
Exactly.
I think everybody should introduce themselves in that same sort
Sure.
of volume and intonation. Hello, I'm Tom Grant.
Let's see. You've got the two it's got to be monosyllabic, right? I mean,
Right.
it can't be Stephen Taylor. It doesn't work.
That still works.
It's not the same.
I would say. I didn't think it would work for Volodymyr Zelensky.
Taylor and Frankenstein. Never mind.
Frankenstein Jr.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was not a good one.
No.
Okay, so the elevator pitch. Do you want to give it, or shall I give it?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go for it. You do this one.
A self-appointed space ranger and his two children assistants, not his children, they just were children, and a monkey patrol patrol the universe, and have a easy time finding people who need to be patrolled,
That's about
if you
right.
know what I mean.
So many monkeys, man. What was it about
Yeah.
monkeys?
I don't know, because monkeys are not a good pet in real life.
They rip
Like
your
if
face
somebody
off.
said, exactly, like if somebody said, yeah, I want to have a monkey, and they were an obliging parent, that would go badly.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the elevator pitch. So the stars of the show were Space Ghost,
Yes.
who wore a white uniform, was pretty cool. I mean, this
Yeah,
is where
yeah,
I was saying about Alex Toth. His character designs are great.
yeah.
Less so with the kid sidekicks Jan and Jace,
Yes.
and Blip the monkey. And so, these were 10-minute cartoons.
Uh, I'm sorry. No,
Are you with
okay.
me here?
I'm
Am I
sorry.
losing you?
I was thinking about the fact. I know I'm interrupting, but we were talking the other day about my theory that the Q continuum could have been like all the super overpowered creatures in Trek could all be part of the continuum.
Right.
So maybe all these monkeys are part of the monkey continuum, right?
They are.
Because it's always just Gleep and Glorp, and that's a different things. But what's the super friends of a monkey? There's a monkey here. There's monkeys everywhere. Anyway, the monkey
Yeah.
continuum.
So there were the monkeys are really the puppet masters
That's
behind
right.
all these
That
cartoons.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they and originally I read that Bandit on Johnny Quest was supposed to be a monkey. So see, it just proves it right there.
Thank God he wasn't. Okay. Anyway, so lots of different villains, lots of very interestingly drawn characters on the villain side often.
Yes.
Uh, so what was cool about Space Ghost?
So I mean, Space Ghost is basically a superhero show, right? And
Yeah.
and I would say to go ahead and put a lot of this into the similar mold, whether we're talking about, and we'll do the elevator pitches for the shows, but Space Ghost, Herculoids, and Super Friends, I noticed in particular, basically follow a similar format per story. Um, for some reason, a bad guy shows up
Hmm.
who has some nefarious plan. It varies. Sometimes it makes no sense whatsoever, like the heat thing or whatever the first episode of Space Ghost is. It's just a big. All of a sudden, a monster appears out of the Earth or some planet,
Right.
and they have to stop it. That's the plot.
Right.
This is
Or
typical.
there's a guy with a shrink ray.
Yeah, a guy or yeah, yeah. Not to be confused with Doctor Shrinker.
Yes.
Um, speaking of other Saturday morning nonsense, and then the good guys have to defeat the bad guy in roughly 8 to 12 minutes.
Yes.
And that's basically what it is. And what makes Space Ghost interesting or cool is, I think, as you've kind of already pointed out, they were interesting villains, and it moved. It looked good. They had their cool ship, and they had their cool uniforms, and they had their inviso power. While they couldn't just be
Hmm.
invisibility, but it was inviso power. And they
Again,
did
why
it.
not? Why wouldn't
Sure.
you want to call it
They
Invisipower if you could?
they did for what's the word I want? Foretell the TNG communicators because they would touch their
Yes.
logos and that would be their communicator. So there you go.
Yeah. Good logo, by the way.
Yeah, good logo. It was a good logo. It all does raise a whole host of questions as to where
Child
he got these.
endangerment.
Yeah, the whole these two kids, these two teens, and the
Why does
monkey
he
and the
have the two
ship and the
kids?
base, and what's going on, and why are they all in costume? And
But we were kids. We didn't need an
I know
origin
we didn't.
story.
No, no, no. So it was.
I never was watching this and said, this
Yeah.
is implausible. Who's
Oh
funding
no.
Space Ghost?
Well, yeah, that's right. Um, it's just basically superheroes in
Yeah,
space.
anyway, by the way, child endangerment will be a constant thread
Oh, it's
throughout
a constant thread.
these cartoons that we'll be
And it also
discussing.
had, and really in terms of powers, it's kind of goofy. He had power bands that, as often was the case in the 60s, superheroes had some kind of power you could take away. So you could take if you took his power bands away, he lost a
Right.
lot of his powers. But he hit these giant buttons, which seemed to be pretty dangerous, really, because you probably hit one of those on accident and like evaporate something. But he'd fly around and he would blast people and sound very dramatic and save the
Yes.
day.
Yes. And speaking of sounding very dramatic,
Yes.
I put that down as one of the cool things was that Space Ghost was voiced by Gary Owen,
Yes.
who was the announcer on Laugh-In. And
Yes.
it was always hilarious to me. Like his little asides were great. Anyway, and he was a very good voice actor, and I think
Yes.
contributed a lot to this. The other interesting voice actor in this show, Tim Matheson,
Yes. Yes.
who was
Crazy.
who was one of the kid sidekicks.
And
So
Johnny Quest.
yeah, and Johnny Quest. So if you want to launch your career in Hollywood,
That's right.
cartoons may be a plausible starting point. Okay, so also this was the inspiration behind the later TV show Space
Yes.
Ghost Coast to Coast, which I enjoyed. Did you like that show?
Yeah, I never watched it regularly, but I've mostly watched it on clips on YouTube, and I watched it some when it was on. I found it very amusing,
Yes.
very
I,
bizarre.
yeah, I mean, jokingly we stole at one place I worked because we were dealing with people who were pretty mellow. Uh, the interview question, are you getting enough oxygen?
Yeah, it's
So
good.
anyway, so thank you, Space Ghost Coast to Coast. What was lame?
I mean, the monkey.
And the fact that this plot would often hinge on the invisible monkey saving the day.
That's true. The invisible monkey often saved the day. And yeah, sometimes it's like it was lame that I don't know what's going on or why is it happening. It just happens. But that's again was fine when I was 8.
Yes. Awful lot of space empires or space villains. If you really thought about it,
Yeah,
the universe is utter anarchy.
yeah, absolutely.
But you didn't think about it too hard because these were short,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
were basically like comic book length. They're like Silver Age comics. They had
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of that
That
feel to it. It's
was
like,
I think
oh,
that's
the
fair.
Flash encounters a new villain. It's the Mirror Master,
Yes.
and he has a wacky new power and poses some challenge to the Flash that he hadn't encountered before, and he cleverly gets out of the trap that's laid for him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. The lame part is again after a while you realize it's kind of the same plot every story.
Yeah, yeah, and the child endangerment that was lame.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
that's sure.
okay. All right, moving right along. The Herculoids. All
Okay,
right.
so I'll do that one real quick. So weird space barbarians and their superpowered pets
Quasi dinosaurs.
protect their planet from various threats. Right? So you've got the family. And I should have. Do you have the characters' names? I realize I don't have them written
I
down.
Yes, I do.
Xandor is the dad.
Yeah, and they are a family.
Yeah.
The child endangerment actually makes more sense here.
Although the kid calls his parents by their first names, which kind of threw me at first.
Hmm.
You got the who
Well,
is the
it's a
names?
different culture.
Sure. Xandor.
Get educated, Stephen.
I'm sorry. Now it's your turn to get on me. Yeah.
Okay, so Xandor,
Yeah.
Tara,
Tara, that's right.
Dorno is the kid.
Yeah. And then there's Gleep and Glop, which are two
Gloop and
sort of
Gleep.
Gloop and Gleep, excuse me. Gleep and Glop are something else. Um,
Anyway,
they're shape-shifting things. I don't know what they're supposed to be.
this
So
may
you've
be the
got
hardest episode for us to get through.
could be. And you've got the
Igu,
Igu, the flying
no,
like
no, 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 no. That's
no, Igu
Zoc.
is that's Zoc, excuse me.
Igu's the rock gorilla.
You can tell that it really matters to me what these characters. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's
Zoc is the
Igu,
flying dragon.
Doc is the flying dragon who, for some reason, has eye beams and a tail beam.
Because why not?
Yeah, that's the theme. And Igu is the ape, the rock ape,
Yes, the rock ape,
or
who
the rock
basically
ape.
throws rocks.
Yeah, and then there's
It could be
the
his poop. Who knows?
it might be, and then there's the dinosaur that fires rocks out of its horn.
Yeah, it's sort of like a ceratopsian sort of
Yeah, and what's his
dinosaur.
name?
Tundro.
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 So, as best I can tell, this planet gets attacked rather frequently by outside and internal forces because it's kind of a funky planet. Weird things
Yeah.
going on. We got spider people and we got all kinds of things going on.
Crystal people
They
and
were invaders, the crystal people.
I know.
But,
Well, yeah, lots of invaders and the pirates
and then they just sort of have to defend the planet, and that's what the family and because the Herculoids are actually the whatever the creatures the Herculoids. The family's
yes,
not the Herculoids, right?
yes, right.
So they're all protecting the planet, and it's in the same style as Space Ghost. I think technically they're in the same universe, correct? Isn't
Yes.
there some crossover?
Yes.
The art, the approach, the sound effects, and really the basic storylines are quite similar to Space Ghost.
Yeah, but I don't remember any crossover at the time. I don't know.
I think I read there was one, but I
Oh, okay.
forgot. I was going to look it up to confirm, and I did not do
Yeah,
so.
and it was also
Right.
like the very cool Alex Toth
Oh yeah,
designs,
very
the characters, heroes and villains.
the coolest part, I think, in the cool of both those shows, I think the way it looked really cool, and it was
Yes.
dynamic, even though it was still, you could tell that some was sort of, I'm not quite sure what the animation style is. Stop motion is not the right word, but where obviously some of it is static and only parts
Yes.
of the screen are animated to save money and time.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
still, it's enjoyable.
I also liked it, and I think this may have been too the case when I was a kid, that they didn't really sandwich it into a particular genre. So as you said, it was barbarians, so it was had sort of like the sword and sorcery feel to it.
It
There were
did, yeah.
dinosaurs, there were science fiction elements. It was nuts.
Yes.
I mean, it was just
Yeah, yeah.
everything thrown into the blender.
Agreed.
Yeah. What was lame about the Herculoids?
I know. Just the same with Space Ghost. It was kind of the same plot every episode.
Yeah. And I would also say it did bother me when I was a kid that this planet was invaded so often.
That's right.
I mean, Space Ghost was flying around looking for trouble.
That's right.
He
That's
was looking
right.
for evildoers around the galaxy. These poor saps just were the victims of constant invasion.
Well, the other thing about it that it struck me, I think I thought about this before, but it struck me this time. Um, Again, because why not? Let's connect it back to Code of Honor because why not?
Yeah.
I kind of like I had a problem with like what is the exact developmental state of the Ligonians? What is the exact developmental state of this family? Because they seem to both understand complex science fiction stuff,
Hmm.
yet they're fighting with like slingshots and stuff.
Yeah, Xandor's weapon is a slingshot and
Yeah,
he has a shield.
as a shield, and the shield though the shield can like deflect laser weapon, like energy weapons. So it's not
Yes.
like just a plain old shield.
Right.
So are we advanced? Are we not advanced? What's going on here? I'm
And
confused.
why didn't he give his shield to his wife?
Well, it's the sexism of the '60s, Tom. That's what that is.
I don't know. He clearly doesn't care about her.
All right,
Okay.
moving right
All right.
along.
Moving right along. Johnny Quest. Okay. The elevator pitch here is, I think, probably more sensical. Uh, Here it's that there is a scientist, Dr. Benton Quest, who is one of these super geniuses that appears often in adventure fiction. He's sort of like a Doc Savage or other person
Hmm.
who's always doing science of different varieties. He has very, very diffuse boundaries in his expertise in science with an
As one.
exclamation point.
He blinded us with science, Tom. That's what happened.
Yes. And he has another adult, Race Bannon,
Yes.
who is I don't know. It's unclear exactly what his job is. He's often really sort of a protector of Benton Quest's son, Johnny.
I think the first episode establishes he was there to protect the child because the mother was killed at some point
Oh, that's right.
for
That's
reasons
right.
we don't know ever why. And he's kind of like bodyguard and tutor.
Because of his reckless experimentation, no doubt. I mean,
I don't know.
something went terribly wrong. And then Johnny has a friend, Haji,
Hmm.
who's an Indian. And
Hmm.
then there's Bandit, the dog, which you mentioned
Yes.
before, which
Who could
thank
have been a
God it
monkey?
was who could have been a monkey. Uh, okay, what was cool about Johnny Quest?
I think the vibe, I'm going to go with vibe, which is a modern term, at least
Yes.
relative to the 1960s. It has a very cool vibe. It's got that kind of hip mid 60s James Bondian kind of, but somewhat retro future feel to it, right? It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of the same kind of vibe you get from The Incredibles many, many years later.
Yes.
Um, and I like the whole adventure element of it and sort of the super age secret agent, super intelligent genius scientist guy. All that's kind of cool, and it has a that's what I thought was cool about it. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, I would say it was sort of like, Nancy Drew or the Hardy Brothers with crazy science and sort of a new frontier early 60s vibe to it, even when it is extended into the later
Yeah.
60s. In fact, like the first episode, there are these government agents who show up, and I feel like this could be a James Bond movie or
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
anything of that particular vintage. Man from Uncle, I think it's exactly. I'm exactly in agreement with you on the vibe is terrific. Good bad guys too, and
Yeah, good
so
bad guys.
I think a lot of people who watch this show in their youth will say, "Oh my God, the spider robot," or
Mm.
"the invisible monster," or whatever. I mean, just I
Did he
just
have Inviso powers?
he did not have invisible powers,
That's too bad.
but he was pretty terrifying. I remember when I was a little kid. I would also put under what was cool about it is this is the direct inspiration for. We mentioned Space Ghost Coast to Coast being inspired by Space Ghost. This cartoon inspired the Venture Brothers, which is kind of a spoof of it, but sort
Hmm.
of a spoof on all these cartoons.
Right.
Which I've enjoyed the Venture Brothers a lot. Any other cool things?
No, that wraps it up, I think.
Okay, what was lame?
The Haji thing didn't age well.
No, it's cringy. He's a
And
stereotypical Indian and
yes,
not
yes.
not good.
Yeah.
I child endangerment again.
Yeah, sure. Lots
Like
of
why?
child.
Why doesn't Dr. Quest send his son to a boarding school in Switzerland instead of dragging him into one danger zone after another? I
It's an
didn't.
excellent question.
Yeah, I think the animation style isn't as good for at least for me as
Yeah.
it was for Space Ghost and the Herculoids. In fact, it was like blotchier in the pilot and had this like weird tilting of the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
angles.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, it wasn't as good. All right,
Agreed.
so that's Johnny Quest. Super Friends. What was
Super.
what's the elevator pitch? It's pretty easy.
Yeah. Let's take the Justice League and call them Super Friends.
You know, what else do you need?
Originally it was the core, right? It was Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and
Robin.
Robin. And then unfortunately there's at least three key eras, right? There's
Yeah.
the Marvin and Wendy era, which
Hmm.
is the worst of the eras in terms of we had to have for some reason lame teenage sidekicks. So in
And a dog.
originally and a dog.
Not a monkey.
Or
Oh,
a
by the
monkey.
way,
Well,
something that's cool about Johnny Quest: no
yeah,
monkeys.
no monkeys.
Yeah.
So originally it was Marvin who just dressed up like a superhero, like a kid would wear a cape, but he didn't have any powers. And then
Yes.
and then Wendy, I can't remember were they sisters or brother or were they just friends? I can't even remember now. And then Marvin the Wonder Dog. And then later it became the Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina, who had powers but was still
Yes.
quite annoying, and they had a monkey, a space monkey, the best kind of monkey.
Yes.
And then there's later, which actually I kind of already aged out of it at this point. Although I remember my brother watched that, I'm pretty sure there was the actually better era, I think, which was the superpowers era where they actually
Hmm.
had Dark Side and of course they brought in more over time. They brought in more super friends. Super friends, I appreciated, right? It was, but I remember being very young and being very excited if any other superheroes showed up. Because at the beginning they wouldn't bring in other superheroes, right? Like if the Flash showed up or Green Lantern showed up, that was like really, really cool.
Yes.
And of course, also I think during the Zan and Jaina era is also the Legion of Doom era, where they had all the
Hmm.
bad guys, which I enjoyed that. And because they had a skull-shaped secret hideout that for some reason would go under the swamp, as one does, right? So anyway, but I
It,
would say
it probably made commuting there difficult.
sure. I think the plots in some ways are not dissimilar from Herculoids or Space Ghost. Bad guy does something, Super Friends have to stop the bad guy, and they stop him eventually. That's
Right.
kind of each episode.
But it was multiple bad guys.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was
Especially,
like a Justice League comic, where
yeah,
if you had multiple bad guys, like the Sinister Six or some,
mm,
anyway, they would be acting in concert on some sort of plot, like let's turn Superman evil,
yes.
let's cause disasters around the globe. And I really liked the things that were cool. I really liked that they did like dig into the DC supervillain
Yeah. Oh yeah.
catalog pretty well. I didn't like in the later eras the superheroes they made up for.
Yes, I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
Apache Chief.
Ugh,
Um,
talk about cringy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There were several like that.
Yeah.
Black Vulcan, Apache Chief, and there was an Asian character whose name is escaping me right now.
Yeah, I don't
And they were
remember.
all, again, I didn't understand. Again, as a child, I'm like, why are you making things up when there are other characters in the comics you could be putting on the screen? I never understood that.
Yes.
Um,
Well, we didn't know about licensing fees or
yeah, that's part of
legal
it.
Entanglements and so
Clearly,
forth.
clearly.
It just was lame.
Exactly, exactly. Kind of like, which I only really is the found this out recently, that Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which was an '80s cartoon, right,
Mhm.
with Iceman, Spider-Man, and a character they made it for the show Firestar.
Yeah.
But originally it was supposed to be the Human Torch, and they couldn't get the licensing for it, so they had to make another fire-based character. I did
Yeah.
not know that. So yeah, there's all that
That would
kind
have
of
been
stuff
great
going on.
given the friendship between Spider-Man and the Human Torch in the comics.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I also should say just to defend Super Friends a little bit, which is a weird thing to say. This was an era when there were teenage sidekicks for super teams. So there
Oh
was
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Snapper
yeah.
Carr for the Justice League and
Yes.
Rick Jones for the Avengers. So it wasn't completely crazy to do it in a cartoon
No, it was just.
with
Ugh.
Wendy and Marvin, but they were annoying. They were useless.
As I recall, Snapper Jones is called Snapper Jones because he would snap.
Snapper Carr.
Snapper
Yes,
Carr.
he would snap his
Yeah,
fingers. Yes.
yeah. How exciting is that? I mean, that's writing right there, my friends.
I know, yes. It tells you all you need to know about the character. Like, where are his parents? Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
uh, okay. What was lame? We mentioned a couple of things already, but what was
So
lame
I
about
mean,
the Super Friends?
the sidekicks were lame, and the fact that they made them seem, I don't know, less cool than the comic. And in fact, I realized that I think one of the reasons, I mean, I enjoyed, the cool thing was there were superheroes on TV every Saturday. That was
Yeah.
cool. And that I liked as a kid. But I also think that part of my perception of DC as being less serious than Marvel is partially because of Super Friends.
I think you're absolutely right because it was so goofy.
It was very goofy.
Yeah. I mean, as a comics fan, it just over
Yeah.
time just got worse and worse watching the Super Friends
Yeah, yeah.
saying, why is this so
Yeah, yeah.
childish and badly written?
Yeah, yeah.
So the sidekicks were terrible. The evil plots were pretty dumb
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, well, one of the ones that I watched because it all fits in with the monkey theme was
Mhm.
two Gleeks are deadlier than one. Where for some weird reason, did you watch this one?
No, I didn't.
Giganta, what's the
Yeah, that's isn't that Giganta?
Giganta and Gorilla Grodd kidnap Gleek and duplicate him to create a version that has eye beams that disintegrate people to then attack the Super Friends, who apparently did the whole thing as a big fake out. So they had androids that got disintegrated, and then the real Super Friends captured Gorilla Grodd and Giganta. It was great.
Hmm.
It made no sense at all, to be totally honest.
Because, robot duplicates are just something you keep around the house.
Just
I know I
sure.
do.
Up to Doctor Doom does. What are you making fun of Doctor
That's
Doom?
right. I would never
Are
make
you
fun of
better than
Doctor
Doctor
Doom.
Doom?
No. I never make fun of anybody who speaks of themselves in the third person as
Well,
much as he
Superman
does.
also has a robot,
I've
doesn't he? Some
I was
name?
just about to say that he has the robot duplicates at the Fortress of Solitude. Man, we're geeks. I would also add Wonder Woman's invisible plane always
Oh,
seemed
it's
dopey to
good.
me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, and I can't remember like when I was watching it, she had a name for it too,
Oh, for the plane?
for the plane. Yeah, in one episode
Oh
she said
gosh,
something that was a name. I can't. It's killing me. I can't remember. I
Phineas.
finance. No, something like Hera or it was there was a Greek mythology reference
Yeah, yeah.
involved. I would not put Aquaman on the list of lame. elements of this show. I'm going to defend Aquaman.
All right,
I
you
saw
go for it.
Aquaman in the Super Friend cartoons actually do some pretty heroic things. You know, like at one point, a city needed protection, and he called in all these incredible number of whales to protect the shoreline from some impending peril. Uh, I think that's a later invention, just like how lame Aquaman was. You feel free to disagree, but I thought
I,
Aquaman wasn't as bad as he often is described.
well, that may be true. I never was a big Aquaman guy, but yeah, he could talk to the fish.
And that's always important.
He had that, his.
You
I
always
always
need a
liked the
fish
fact that
whisperer.
his mental powers with like circles going out. It was great.
I like that.
It made that noise. That made that noise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. We're gonna get into sound effects later. Okay. Do you mind doing the
No, not at all.
elevator pitch for Battle of the
So
Planets, which is
battle.
actually oh wait, which is actually Science Ninja Team Gatchaman in the original
Pikachu.
Japanese
Yeah,
Gatchaman.
yeah, that which sounds a whole lot cooler actually than G-Force. But yeah, so Battle of the Planets is a show about five teenagers with bird-linked powers, kind of, that fly around in a spaceship and protect Earth from, according to the voiceover, challenges from beyond our galaxy. I would point out that the show did not know what a galaxy was.
No.
But and through the guidance of some sort of organization and a robot called Seven Zark Seven that helps them fight Zoltar and the evil creatures from beyond space. That's
Okay.
the basic. That's the basic. Basically a superhero science fiction show.
Yes. Super team.
Super team, yes.
Yeah, super team. And the characters were Mark, Jason, Princess, Keop, and
And
Tiny
time.
Harper.
Yep.
All right. What was cool about this?
So what was cool to me? So this is one of the shows that I watched that you did not watch, correct?
Correct.
You didn't watch any of the ones we're about to talk about. This is all my fault.
No, no.
Battle of the Planets was on in 1978. Again, it was an after school show that I watched. What was cool about it was, I think, for me at the time, and I think I probably was peak watching this in third and fourth grade. It was a superhero kind of motif with science fiction, because it was right in the sweet spot of Star Wars. It just premiered, and so science fiction is a big deal. And what I thought was cool about it, and I still think is cool about it, is some of the Japanese content, because there's some stuff's added in.
Hmm.
Is some of the artwork for me at the time was impressive because I had not seen a whole lot like it. It did remind me of some of the Speed Racer. I understood that connection, that there was some kind of similarity. But some of the artwork of the Gatchaman Space Ninja Science, whatever they're called, is actually, I think, pretty interesting. What this show is, and it was a Sandy Frank production, and if you are an MST3K fan, you know what a groan-inducing fact that Sandy Frank might create. And of course, Sandy
Yes.
Frank's the one that helped bring us things like Gamera, which we've talked about before. So this is one of those cases where they've taken a show from Japan, they've basically rewritten it, right? They've taken some of the basics, they've cut a bunch of stuff out, they create this wraparound animation, which you even as a kid, I'm like, there's something not right going on here between the Seven Zark Seven scenes and the G-Force scenes because they don't quite look the same.
Hmm.
So they'd created this whole wraparound thing, and they kind of made them into secret agents almost, or space agents. I don't know what you would call them. And I at the time it really it scratched a certain itch. Now watching it now, well, you've this is the first time I won't even say this. What was your how many did you watch, and what was your impression of this show at this point in
So
time?
I watched effectively 3 episodes,
Okay.
and my major impression was this is clearly a show for a younger audience than
Mm-hmm.
the other ones that we're going to talk
Oh,
about
definitely.
from Japan. And I thought it was good for a younger audience.
Yeah.
I think it was coming from a different culture, but it definitely, I think, could, kind of push the same buttons as, you know, Space Ghost
Yeah.
or Herculoids or any of the other ones that we talked about.
In some ways,
A good
no,
cartoon for little kids.
yeah, in some ways it was the same plot as those two shows, right? It
Yes.
was bad guy is doing something, We must stop the bad guy. And because it's a half an hour show, usually there was some defeat in the middle before there was a triumph at the end.
Hmm.
Often they would, decide to do this. I forget what they call it now. The cyclone effect is not what it's called. They all,
Hmm.
for some reason, if they all stand on one another's shoulders and spin real hard, it becomes difficult to defeat. There's a lot of, as a kid, I loved the whole bit about transmute. They're in their like street clothes and
Hmm.
they're in their, lame vehicles. But if they transmute, all of a sudden their vehicles go really cool and they have their like bird costumes on. I don't know. That was the kind of thing that a fourth grader would have thought was pretty cool. Um, I like the uniforms. I like the ship. I like some of the animation. That was the thing that really drew me in at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Uh, what was lame?
Oh, Sims Arc 7 is pretty lame. Keop is very lame.
I
Keop is the young kid. He
yeah.
makes bird noises. He's supposedly an artificial. I don't know what that was supposed to be about. He was annoying.
Yeah. I think Tiny was fat shamed a little bit.
He was. Oh, totally. Absolutely, he
Yeah.
was.
That was not good.
No.
I thought the cartoons were kind of slow. I mean, these
Yeah,
were
they are.
10
They are.
minute segments like Space Ghost and the Herculoids. Um, Something like the chief villain, like the first one I watched, kind of looked ridiculous.
Hmm.
Yeah, like often there would be in Japanese cartoons, it seemed at this time, like characters who were somewhat sinister but also slightly ridiculous.
Right.
And they were often like sort of squat, very round-headed people. And this kind of fit that particular meme. It's like,
Well, there was, and I don't. Again, it only partially comes out at the beginning. There's this whole thing about Zoltar is the main bad guy, but there's also he's got a boss who's like the I can't believe I can't remember all this stuff. The imminent intelligence or something like that, but I'm forgetting what he's
doesn't
called.
matter.
And there is some kind of. I remember there was a little bit of a mystery about Zoltar that's kind of woven through the story later, and I think in the original it's a little deeper than that.
Hmm.
There's also some ginger stuff that got flushed out of the American version that's in the Japanese version. So I always got this hint that there was actually more to the story than was in the Battle of the Planets version, but I've never taken the time to really explore what that may mean.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to Macross, also known as Robotech, originally Super Dimension Fortress Macross.
Yes.
Yes. So the elevator pitch, I'll do this one. So
Okay.
an alien spaceship crashes on the Earth.
Right.
The humans try to reverse engineer the technology, uh, both for both for fixing the spaceship and using it uh, as their own
Yes.
vessel, as well as inventing new military technology based on this. The race that created the spaceship shows up saying, "Hey, hold on,
That's right.
that's our property," and a really cataclysmic war ensues.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there are mechs. There are
Yes.
giant robots that transform.
Yeah, the planes transform. In fact, the space defense fortress transforms. It's some of the early. Well, of course, this one was on in the '80s, and I
Yes.
realized, and so of all the things we're talking about here, this is the one that's the latest in the timeline. Really, the Starblazers is actually before Robotech, but we'll. Um, and it's funny. At first, I was thinking that I had watched it earlier, but really, this was on when I was, I think, a junior and senior in high school.
Hmm.
And it was on after school. And I think my brother may have been watching it first, and he may be listening and he can correct me. But I feel like I don't know that I found it, but I started watching it because it was all, and I didn't see all of it. I know there were gaps because either at that point in my life I had a part-time job and other things going on. And I saw quite a bit of it and was impressed with it at the time. And in watching it now, I was impressed that I kind of wanted to keep watching. I have some critiques, but I mean, I think it's a compelling story. And like Star Blazers, which we'll talk about here in a moment, and this, it was an example of truly serialized storytelling. There was a
Yes.
long, there was a story here, and and characters change and develop over time, and It actually is pretty impressive in that regard. It was an example of a particular kind of storytelling that often was not present in cartoons at the time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I think of the three that I saw here that I hadn't seen before, this was easily my favorite.
Yeah. How many did you watch?
I think four.
Yeah, I went in watching six of them because I just kept wanting to see what was happening next. I
Well,
mean,
it
some
seemed
of
like
it,
a much more serious sort of story, and you know, when I say it was a cataclysmic war, I mean we
yeah.
see devastation on planet Earth in
Oh,
the
yeah.
first episode.
Oh,
Just the aliens show up and just start bombarding human
yes.
cities and killing millions of people.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is, you know, not like, oh, Batman,
That's right. That's right.
I have
That's right.
stolen your utility belt level of danger.
No, not even close.
Yeah, and the storyline about trying to figure out how to use the technology and it not
Yeah.
always working
Yes.
properly was good. I mean, and the centerpiece is the big battleship, the super dimension fortress, and
Yes.
the mechs that turn into what looked like F-15 fighter planes.
Yes.
And also like the aliens have their own mechs that look different and are kind of cool
Yes.
looking.
And they're
Um,
giants.
and they're giants. Oh, we forgot to mention the giants. Yes.
And or the fact that the humans are small. They call them micronians, which I think is kind of funny.
Hmm.
So is it the fact that the humans are normal size and the Zentradi are giants, or is it the other way around? The Zentradi are normal size and the humans are just small. It's all relative, isn't it, Tom? It's all
Isn't it?
relative.
God, you're blowing my mind, man. And I did appreciate the long form. I mean that did keep me
No, I
going for
mean, I really,
multiple
I mean, I
episodes.
didn't have time, and I may even now go back and watch it because I don't think I've ever seen every single episode. Because again, like I said, it was on daily, on whatever channel it was in LA, and probably channel 13. And I didn't see all of them. But
Yeah.
it was compelling,
And there were
and
multiple series, right? That
well, what happened was there were three different Robotech as a TV show in the United States was actually three separate anime series redone and packaged together because the Macross saga by itself was not long enough to justify
Mhm.
syndication. So in theory, they're kind of tied together, but they really aren't the same story.
Mhm.
And I've seen parts of all three. I can't remember what the other two are called right now. I did not make notes. But Macross was the one that really was compelling to me. The other two were entertaining, but not memorable in any way.
Yeah.
This one, even though I couldn't cite chapter and verse, but there are things I do remember, and I found like the characters more interesting than a typical TV cartoon
Yeah.
too. I mean, they weren't always perfect. I mean, there were some stereotypes like, Roy, the fighter pilot, he's very cocky but I
Hmm.
mean, Rick Hunter who becomes kind of I'm getting my characters confused. Yeah, I mean, that's the right character. He becomes more significant later. I mean, he's in the intro in the full gear, but he starts out as kind of a civilian nobody.
Right.
And I like the captain who's not perfect although I did realize until this viewing he's supposed to be Russian. I don't know why I used to think he was like Portuguese or what was he supposed to be, but he he's he's Russian. Um, I love the bit where he like is going to light up his pipe on the bridge, and the one of the bridge crew says that's against the rules. He goes, oh,
Right.
I wasn't going to light it. I'm just holding it. I don't know. I
Yes.
just find it amusing. I mean, it makes it pretty. There are some things that are kind of bizarre, right? I mean, that they built the city right around the ship seemed like a really bad idea,
Hmm.
especially since they don't even know, let's say, how to fly the thing. And you'd think they'd figured a few things out before they were about to launch, but anyway. Um, and when they warp out with the city in the ship, it reminds me
Yes.
in some ways of an early version of Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, right? You get your ship in danger, but you've got the civilian population you have to protect.
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
sort of interesting in that
So
regard.
I love the scene, by the way, where they're taking off for the first time,
Yeah.
and they're not sure how reliable the anti-grav
Yeah,
technology
yeah.
is, and the anti-grav generators
That's
tear
right.
themselves out of the
That's right.
ship
That's right.
and keep going up.
Oops.
What?
Yeah, yeah, that was good. Yeah. Yeah, I will say that they have, and this is something that happened to Starblazers too. They really don't understand distance.
No.
It drives me a little crazy. But anyway,
Well, this is an ongoing problem, I think, not just in cartoons,
no, it's
but
true.
in a lot of popular culture, especially like on television, that like there's no idea how big things are. You know, how big space is, how long, like when ships are fighting each other in space, how close they need to be to each
Yeah, that's
other.
true. That's true.
Yeah. Anyway,
No,
it's
no,
not
because
it's not a terrible problem here.
they warp out to Pluto, and they talk how long it's going to be to get back to Earth. But some they get from Pluto to Saturn pretty damn fast, which is a long
Yeah.
way, a
Yeah.
long way.
Hmm.
Anyway, but minor things.
Minor things, right?
So,
But I could really understand why this captured the imagination of a lot of
mhm.
teenagers at the time who became big anime and mecha fans because of the
Yeah, yeah.
show. Yeah,
So what was lame about it?
I didn't have any strong dislikes about it. I think sometimes it was a little implausible that the civilian would become as kind of important right away as he was in
Hmm.
in the Space Force. Though I did like him as a point of view character at the beginning, just because
Yeah,
he was discovering things along with us. Like he gets in the plane, he doesn't know it transforms. Some of the soap opera elements were a little
yeah,
schlocky, but nothing like I would say I would say on my hate list for this
yeah. I mean,
cartoon.
I thought I'd forgotten some of it. I'd forgotten that he wasn't in Space Force at the beginning,
Hmm.
or whatever they call it. I think I'm mixing terms from Star Blazers, but um, I I was pleased when I was watching it this time that he didn't automatically become a nice pilot like from the beginning, which often is the way these things work.
Right, right.
In fact, he made a mess of the whole thing
Yes.
at the beginning. The Min-May stuff gets a little annoying, and it continues. There's a sort of soap opera stuff that I find a little
Well,
annoying, but at least
explain Min May
so
to the
Lin
audience.
Min-May is this civilian character, um, and Rick Hunter is taken with her almost immediately when they sort of first encounter her at Macross City, and then he has to rescue her from a attack from the Zentradi, and they kind of get trapped in an abandoned part of the ship for like I don't know weeks and weeks. And there's a whole storyline about this that I do remember some amount. There's some lovelornness about it, and she becomes a pop star, and it adds content and not con what's the word that I want. It adds some texture to the story, but it gets a little to me a little grating. But again, it partially
Hmm.
it's my memory of being a 17-year-old watching this and finding
Yeah.
well, probably wanting more space battles and less
Pop
other
star
stuff, but
singer.
pop star singing. But it's also she's very giggly, and I'm not a big. It's a bit much, but I mean that's a minor. I think overall it's an interesting narrative and well written and well done, and then the artwork is good as well.
Yeah,
Anything else about that one?
I don't think this is necessarily a lame element specifically of Robotech, but something that, I just has caught my attention over and over again. Just I'm not a big anime fan. I haven't watched a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But the idea that very often the fate of the world or the universe rests on extremely young people,
Hmm.
teenagers,
Hmm.
on that that doesn't kind of sit well with me. I don't
Hmm.
know. The implausibility of it, the kind of the silliness of it.
Well, I,
It's
I
like
guess
kind of like
I'll
we complained about the kid sidekicks of the
yeah,
Super Friends or Space Ghost or whatever, but they're sidekicks, right? They're not
right.
the frontline people.
Although I guess I would counter that who are the frontline people in wars
Well, kids,
in
yes,
reality,
right,
unfortunately. I
yeah,
take the point. I mean,
yeah, but
yeah,
not young, like school children who do pop singing on the side.
right.
Yeah,
I guess I mean that's
yeah,
definitely the case with Battle of the Planets. I think they're all kids, teenagers, late
yeah,
teenagers. Um, I don't know how old Rick Hunter's supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be military age.
yeah. It's less of a problem here than other
Yeah,
things
yeah.
I've seen. But again, I mean, I'm no expert. In fact,
Right.
like earlier, I said I got this book on, kind of the history of manga and anime, not anga and manime. Uh,
Genghis Khan,
that's right, manga and anime,
Manga Khan.
MangaCon, just so that I could, educate myself more
Right.
about it. and see where I my interest should go. And this was definitely one of the directions I'm glad I went in.
Yeah, and I must apologize to the audience. You put the names of the Herculoids in the notes, and I just didn't pay attention.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
fine. That's fine.
moving right along.
Okay, moving right along to Starblazers,
Starblazers
Space Battleship
of
Yamato
Yamato.
1.
So Starblazers is a also a serialized story about an alien attack on the Earth. And we join the Earth after it's been bombarded by the Gamelons to the point that the surface is radioactive and not habitable, and the humans are living in underground cities. And they are at a point where if they have a year left before the radiation kills them all. And for reasons that are at least not clear at the beginning, and I'm not sure ever explained, some aliens from the planet Iskandar offer a solution to the problem of this radiation and send the Earthlings both directions to their planet, which is like 148 light years away or something like that, and technology to create the wave motion engine, allowing them to transverse this space in a year's time and get back to Earth. And the humans basically reanimate the corpse of this battleship Yamato from some war that's not named, back when countries used to fight.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is a World War II
It's just,
battleship,
yeah, it's just sitting around on a scrap heap.
and somehow they're able to refurbish it into a spaceship.
Hmm.
And of course, this is of great significance in a Japanese cartoon. It's not they
Yes.
rename it the Argo in this particular story,
Hmm.
and they take to this quest. So it's a quest. The show's a quest with the Gamelons trying to stop them, but they won't stop until they've won. That's what the song tells me. So
Okay.
it's important, and it's I so what I this is a show that was on. It was I think I was probably in middle school when the show was on, if I remember properly. It was again daily. It was one of the first, really, in terms of chronology, one of the first times that I watched a show that really was serialized storytelling day to
Hmm.
day, and that it was a long term arc. I think, in fact, this one, I think there were two seasons at the time. I think there are three total seasons, but I've only seen two. Actually, I think I watched the second season first because, again, because of linear television, you just join these things, kind of like watching Blake Seven and popping in at the end of
Right.
series two. I watched the second series, which is weirdly another quest they had to go on
Hmm.
uh, against the Comet Empire, don't you know? But nonetheless, again, I at the time I was impressed with the animation. I liked the more complex storytelling. I thought the characters were more interesting than typically was the case on TV cartoons, and and the artwork was different than what I expected. Again, I saw the connection to Speed Racer, but otherwise it was different than anything that I'd seen previous. But you had not seen this at all, correct?
No, I had not seen it at all. I mean, I'd heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had not seen it at all. I mean, it's sort of eye-catching to see the battleship.
Hmm.
Uh, so that I put that in, that as something that was cool was the giant refurbished
Hmm.
space battleship.
Yes.
Um, I also agree about the long form. This one I didn't watch as many episodes, so I don't have
Hmm.
as much to say about it.
Right.
But I think here too, kind of the willingness to not pull any punches in the storytelling.
Yes.
Earth is pretty much dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's bad.
It's bad, and the aliens are relentless, and it's some good storytelling in this. I mean, what did
So,
you think was
so
cool?
I watched four episodes this time, and I again
Hmm.
I have not watched every single one of these, but I know the story relatively well. And again, I think I did see the entire second series. I think that I mean I like the ship, I like the characters, I like the concept.
Hmm.
I thought the art was great. I will say, because I watched four episodes for this discussion. I found that the beginning was a little slow in parts.
Hmm.
And there are things that I know are coming later that make it more compelling. Like you get a hint of Deslok, who is the leader of the Gamelons. He becomes a very interesting character. He's not just a mustache twirling bad guy. He becomes kind
Right.
of interesting. but it takes a while to get to that point.
Hmm.
And I think there's a more of a development of the interplay of the characters on the battleship. Because right now, at the very first several episodes, is basically Derek Wallister is upset because Captain Avatar was overseeing a mission where his brother was killed, and there's this resentment thing with them, and
Hmm.
and they're all trying to kind of, and he's kind of a hothead. Well, he's a wild star, don't you know?
Yeah, it's right in the
And
name.
and so, but you start to see at the beginning there are a number of characters that are going to develop over time, and there are relationships that develop in a way that's more sophisticated than your typical cartoon, which I recall from my watching many decades ago.
And arguably better than Star Trek: The Next Generation season one.
Oh, absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely the
Since
case.
we just did 4 episodes
Sure.
on that.
So I did notice that, yeah, I mean, there's some of the dialogue is stilted. Some of it you can, there's a certain characteristic in my experience, and maybe maybe I'm making this up, but it feels like sometimes when these translations are taking place,
Hmm.
they're working too hard to match the cadence of the lip movement, and the dialogue either gets stretched out or compressed in a way that isn't always elegant, shall we say.
Yes. Yeah.
There was some of that. And then some of the stuff that happens at the beginning is kind of confusing. It's like, were they already refurbishing the Yamato when they got this technology from Iskandar? Or what? Like, surely they had to be doing some of this already. But again, it's kind of like it has. You can see the so this is before Macross, and you can see the story influences, I think, on Macross, right?
Hmm.
The alien technology, they're having to test it, and sort of the focus on one ship's capacity to sort of save the Earth and all this kind of. There's a lot of and things that I don't think we saw in either one of the shows you watched. So like the they talk about the wave motion gun. Maybe not until the fourth episode. You may not have seen it. It's the big opening in the front of the Yamato is the
Yeah.
wave motion gun,
Hmm.
and it is a devastating weapon, just like the reflex cannon on the space defense fortress. It's a very similar
Hmm.
kind of deal. So you can see some of those sort of similar plot points or story points.
Yeah.
I liked it. Now it was a little slow at times in the beginning.
Hmm.
Did you get to the one that had the wackada wackada music? Because there was some in the episode three.
Oh no, I didn't get to that one. Oh damn.
Yeah. And there was some music that I'm like, oh boy, this was done in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I they have a holodeck, by the way.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Huh.
It's less sophisticated than the one on the Enterprise, but they have a holodeck, same kind of idea.
Oh, fascinating.
Anyway,
Okay. All right. Well, that's our roundup of all the shows that we watched. We're going to have some thoughts about them, overall. But before we do, let's do something that requires no thought whatsoever, and that is give us an impersonation of any character from the cartoons that we watched.
I'm trying. I kind of tried to develop one, but I'm not sure I can do it now.
Oh, there you go. That was good. Okay, I was
Yeah.
going to do that one. It's interesting that we landed on the Herculoids because I was
Yeah.
also so Igu is really easy to do. He's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. There you go.
yeah, that's the rock throwing.
Or is that your Armus?
That's it could be in my Armis too. Yeah. And then Zoc. That's not a hard one, but
Yeah.
Gloop and Gleep, the amorphous
There you go.
aliens.
There you
The
go.
sound effects were pretty great in those cartoons, I have
Yeah,
to say.
they were.
I mean,
They
they
were.
recycled them a lot, so they got a little stale, but the sound
Yes.
effects were pretty damn good. Okay.
Agreed. Agreed.
And we talked a bit about reactions we had to seeing these cartoons again. Any other thoughts about, in general, revisiting them? What did you like the most about, or which ones did you like the most? Maybe
So,
is a
I
good
mean,
starting point.
the ones I think I ultimately like the most are Starblazers and Robotech, and then Space Ghost and the Herculoids because they're kind of in the same ballpark. Those are the ones that I think. And again, I'm tempted again, and I may in fact do it. I may go back and watch both Macross and Starblazers because it's compelling enough to keep my attention.
Yeah, it's something you can have on while you're working too. It doesn't require
Yes,
tons of
that's right.
attention. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say I would definitely like to continue watching Macross.
Hmm.
Um, of the other ones, it's interesting that people thought I think that Johnny Quest was the more sophisticated one. among the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but it's not the one I enjoyed watching as much as
Uh,
the Space Ghost and the Herculoids. Because Space Ghost gets because I think because of Space Ghost goes coast to coast,
mm,
has this reputation for being silly.
yeah,
And I don't know if you want to like waste 10 minutes watching something,
sure.
you could do worse than that or the Herculoids.
I think Johnny Quest, and I think this was true before, but it was reinforced. It's something I can appreciate what it is, but it doesn't. I find it kind of boring, to be honest.
Yeah, it was too long.
But yeah, it's too
So
long. Is
it
part
was
of
a
it.
half an hour versus the
Yeah.
10-minute Space Ghost and Herculoids episodes.
Hmm.
And in Super Friends, you know, I soldiered through episodes of it when I was young because
Sure.
it was the Justice League. But man, it was hard to watch again.
No, it's not great. It's not great. No, no. And yeah, in fact, I have a. When we talk about cartoons our kids watched. They had a much better version of that than we did.
Yeah. Oh, thank goodness. It was what a blown opportunity too,
Yeah.
as a gateway to reading the physical comics,
Right.
because it just did seem silly. And then I felt about like all these attempts to kind of infantilize comic books, like with like Spider-Man and his amazing friends. You remember that? The kids version of Spider-Man.
Oh, the newer version of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Not the
yeah, yeah.
80s version. Yeah, yeah.
Not, and I think about the physical comic book. There was a like a comic book that
Oh,
came out in the 70s that was like a child's version of Spider-Man.
well, they did a version of Super Friends comic, which I'd never had interest in reading. I'm like, why would I want to
God,
read
no.
this?
Yeah. So, which did you enjoy the least? I guess that
So
was
yeah, I mean, Super Friends
Super
probably
Friends.
the
Yeah, that's
least. I
the
mean,
bottom of the.
and Battle of the Planets, obviously, it just doesn't grab me the way it did when I was 8 or 9 years old. It's fine for what it is, but yeah, that one
So, what do you
didn't
think
age well.
attracted you to these cartoons when you were young?
Well, look, I mean, I think anything at the time, was anything that was superhero-y, is that even a word? Or
Here
space was always.
we.
I think cartoons in general were fun, but I think it was, action, heroes doing heroic things, and cool things going on with spaceships and powers. That's always an appeal, right? It's just they're all
Yeah.
that kind of geeky stuff.
I think the art appealed to me too. I mean,
Sure.
it's interesting to think about, but I definitely I remember thinking, wow, that looks really cool.
You're right. Yeah.
Whatever it was, whether it was the new villain who showed up on Space Ghost or
Right.
anyway, it just art design. Again, hats off to our Alex Toth and everybody else who worked on those Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Um, did you watch other cartoons at the time?
Oh, tons. Lots,
Yeah.
tons of cartoons. I mean, um, too many to name. But yeah, there was the wallpaper of my childhood is cartoons. I mean, the ones again, Speed Racer was elemental in terms of my journey,
Mhm.
but like lots of loved Looney Tunes, but also all those other I guess they're Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the Snagglepuss and all that stuff. I mean, there was a whole bunch of cartoons. There was a lot of cartoons.
Yeah. Because we
Scooby
were just like
Doo.
waiting for the next rotation of
Yeah,
whatever the season was that was, of cartoons that were coming out.
that's right.
And we sampled from that. And
I mean, including some pretty lame things. I mean, Speed Buggy and Grape Ape and
oh, the Harlem Globetrotters.
oh
Did you remember?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
what I
they had a
do.
cartoon.
There are all those early Marvel cartoons we talked about before.
Yep.
Those were on after school in some cases. There are a lot of cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you like any of those better than these or vice versa? It's a hard
Uh,
comparison. Like
I
Looney
mean,
Tunes is kind of in its own
Looney Tunes
category.
is classic. I mean, Looney Tunes
Yeah.
would certainly be above a lot, and Speed Racer to me again is right up there. I mean, um, otherwise it's just a help. It's a big. I had to think about how to rank some of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Looney Tunes, I still like, I'll fire up a Looney Tune once in a while
Sure.
because they're still incredibly funny. And it's interesting to kind of look at what the cartoons are that you could still kind of get away with watching as an adult,
Hmm.
without having to like hold your stomach with the nausea of watching the Super Friends. And again, I think Robotech is something that if it were pitched today as, oh, here is a here's an animated series, maybe like toning down some of, as you said, the min-may elements and whatever, could still be yeah, kind of appeal to a contemporary
Well, I
audience.
mean, absolutely. I mean, I
Hmm.
think there is a legitimate realm for animation as a storytelling device that can provide the kinds of stories that you can't necessarily afford to do in a live action format. Or,
Hmm.
we're recording this when we're recording it, it's only a couple of weeks old, right? They're trying to redo Firefly's animated series, which I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that possibility.
Yeah.
And I can see how something like that would be an appropriate, you know, venue
Hmm.
or and there's an example I'm going to talk about in a minute, another kind of serialized cartoon that was actually very well done that really worked as a cartoon.
Okay.
But I'll let you wait and see what that might be.
All right. So I had two questions about, like, we already answered one of them, which was, did something bother you about the Japanese cartoons? The question was, did it bother you that the fate of the world was constantly in the hands of children? But on the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, did it really matter, like, that the borders between fantasy and science fiction and superheroes were so wildly blurred, and
That doesn't
it,
bother
it
me.
didn't matter. It didn't matter to me on the rewatch either.
No.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, great. If you want to go Gonzo, please
You want to get
proceed.
nuts? Let's get nuts.
Let's get nuts. Um, at the time, did you find the sidekicks annoying when you watched
Yes,
this as a kid? Yeah, I
100%.
I sure did. I sure did. It's like,
100%.
get these kids out of here.
Even in the single digits of age, I found them annoying. Again, Super Friends is a great example, right? I don't want to watch Wendy and Marvin or the Wonder Twins. I want to watch Batman and Superman and even poor Aquaman talk to the fish. I don't want to watch these goofy side characters. I don't know why that was thought to be necessary. I don't
All
know.
right. I don't know, because there's like so many episodes too, it seemed, would end with like the hapless sidekick would
Yes.
say something stupid,
Yeah,
or
and everyone
yeah,
laughs.
and everyone ha 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 ha,
That's
you
great.
know,
Yeah, dumb.
and then then they would freeze if it
Yeah,
were a live action show,
sure,
like at
sure.
the end of Police Squad.
That's right. That was
Who
a
was?
staple of the era because they did it on
Oh
Star
yeah,
Trek too, which was really annoying. But yes,
yeah. Okay, who is the most annoying sidekick?
that's a really great
Who
question.
is not a monkey?
Yeah, okay.
Because that's its own
I,
category of
I
annoying.
think I'm gonna go with Marvin.
Yeah, I kind of have to go
Um,
there too.
and then I don't know if Kiop counts as a sidekick, but he's up there.
Yeah, I also Jan, to the point, like, at least the Space Ghost episodes that I watched, she was more a damsel in distress, and that was that
Yes.
was that was bothersome.
But Marvin's the worst.
Marvin's the worst. Okay. Uh, which were more offbeat to you, the Japanese cartoons or the
Off beats. Oh, it's
Hanna-Barbera
the
cartoons?
Hanna-Barbera more offbeat. I mean, Space Ghost and Hercules was offbeat by definition, in my opinion.
Okay.
What
Uh,
about you?
yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Yeah. Uh, when watching the Japanese cartoons, were you either as a kid, or a teenager, or now as an adult, surprised by the amount of death?
It probably strikes me more now than it did then. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty serious stuff. I mean,
it's a lot of killing.
a lot of killing,
Yeah,
a lot of
and and,
explodies, and a lot of bad things happening.
and how about the Hanna-Barbera cartoons? Because there was a lot of like, you didn't see blood,
No.
or exploded bodies and viscera, but yeah, like Space Ghost would like blast a spaceship, and you knew there was somebody inside that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought about that because you'd mentioned it to me. Like some of it, you could still. It's in that weird, like the crystal people. Are
Yeah,
they dead when they get frozen? I don't know. It's
well, they got
unclear.
smashed.
Often they just got frozen and then some did
Yeah,
get smashed. But yeah, I think there used to be a more cavalier attitude toward all that kind of stuff. Now, I
yeah,
mean, I think like Starblazers in the pick, um, they're trying to tell a real war story, and then the war story, there are people that are dying, right? And
yeah.
in Macross as well. But I mean, that was yeah. There's when the Zentradi attack Macross City in second episode. It's crazy. Like buildings are being blown up, people are dying. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's
But it is a war
yeah,
where,
it's a war, and they're being taking it somewhat. I mean, it's not gross, but it's yeah, it's pretty evident.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think I thought about it as a kid, but I certainly noticed
No,
it now.
sure,
I, I
I
and
mean,
I,
it's
I don't think it necessarily is a showstopper problem,
right.
but I kind of understand why some anxious parents, because parents are anxious people by almost by definition, why some anxious people said there's too much violence in cartoons.
Sure, 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 sure.
Okay. Who wins the voice acting award? Because we had some good voice actors. We had Casey Kasem, who played Robin and Super Friends. We had Gary Owen, I mentioned in
And Mark in
it.
G-Force.
Oh, that's right, Mark and G-Force. Casey Kasem will tell you what's in the top 10
It's a long
this week.
distance dedication.
That's right. Gary Owen. Ted Cassidy, who played Lurch on The Addams
Right.
Family and also was in a memorable episode of Star Trek. Key Luke, an Asian American actor. People might remember him from Kung Fu. And Tim Matheson. So they're your five nominees. Who was the
And
best
the
voice
winner
actor?
is.
Yes.
I think it's actually it's hard to pick. You also should have an honorable mention should be Ted Knight for being the announcer on Super Friends.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, let's
Yeah,
add him to the list.
but I think if I had to pick, it's a tough one between Casey Kasem and Gary Owen. Gary
Yeah.
Owen is so iconic as Space Ghost, but Casey Kasem really, as a voice actor in cartoons, was all over the place, right?
Yes.
Not only in Robin and Mark from what we watched here, but he was Shaggy
Yeah. Scooby
for
Doo.
the longest time. He was in a whole bunch of cartoons actually. So I think I'd have to give it to Casey Kasem, but
Just for his ubiquity.
just ubiquity and yeah, therefore his significance.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Gary Owen, and
That's
and
fair.
and it's a personal choice just because I was a big Laugh-In fan when I was a kid. I found him hysterical.
Hmm.
Like I mean, because he had like these 5 second
Yes, that's
drop
right.
in moments, and like he'd say something like, a study shows that 7 out of 8 people mispronounce the word library. Anyway, I found him so funny, and it was fun to hear him as Space Ghost. So he's my pick. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
okay, uh, are the sound effects from these
Yes,
cartoons etched on your brain?
absolutely. Especially the Ray sound
Yeah,
from Space Ghost, which is in a bunch of different cartoons. I couldn't do it, but I can hear it right now as I'm saying it.
yeah. I mean, you can instantly summon
Yeah,
those sounds
yeah,
in your brain.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also could be good sound effects for your phone.
There you go.
Yeah, I got to look into that. All right, so we became parents,
Yes,
and our kids watch cartoons.
yes.
How would you compare these cartoons to what they watched?
So it's funny. I initially was thinking that there was this dearth of cartoons, but then I really stopped and I did a Google search and I actually asked my sons. And actually, I'm going to say, so my kids are range in age from 29 to 25. And they actually, so they're on the cusp of linear TV, DVRs.
Hmm.
There's quite a bit of media. Not at this point, streaming hasn't hit. But I realized that while I think the Saturday morning cartoon experience had been done away with by the time they were watching, there actually was quite a bit of cartoon. So there was the Cartoon Channel, Cartoon Network.
Hmm.
So they had access to a lot of stuff we talked about here, plus new stuff. Nickelodeon had a lot of cartoons, and Disney had a lot of cartoons, and then other random cartoons. So there actually were a number of really good cartoons some that I really remember. Because one of the big ones which is still around, which is SpongeBob SquarePants. That's to me kind of in the Looney Tunes category, the kind of cartoon that it was. But there were a number of geek cartoons that they did like, right? Like my middle son, like Ben 10. Ben 10 was this sort of superhero cartoon,
Yeah.
but also like Jimmy Neutron and the Teen Titans cartoon. they had a much better version of Super Friends. That was my what I was going to say later, which is the Justice League, right? They had the Justice League cartoons and Justice League Unlimited. They far superior to anything that we had as kids.
Yes.
And then one that all of my kids loved, and I watched. It's one of those deals where they're watching, so you're watching while you're doing other things. But Avatar: The Last Airbender was like Starblazers to me, or Robotech. This
Mhm.
serialized, serious story with character development and good animation, so they had and these and then other just sort of silly things like Phineas and Ferb, and what was the other one that I'm forgetting one that I didn't write down, but
Yeah.
oh, the Fairly Odd Parents. These are all actually really good cartoons, which my wife and I still remember enjoying some of these cartoons. They actually had a but it was just a different delivery system. They didn't have to wait till after school necessarily
Right.
or Saturday morning. It was more ubiquitous because you had whole channels dedicated to this stuff. And they also all, to my surprise, cited Tom and Jerry. So they remember watching these reruns at some
Hmm.
point,
Yeah.
and Looney Tunes as well, among other things. So I would say they had a pretty rich access, and they may have seen some of the stuff that we watched, but some of they didn't. Like I don't think any of the Japanese cartoons we're talking about were available at the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I
anyway,
think the delivery mechanisms did play a huge role
oh sure,
because, like, my daughter was not a big cartoon fan,
yeah,
but she did watch like a lot of Disney movies on
hmm
videotape.
right,
Yeah, like I think she and I may have watched of any cartoons together, the Animaniacs the most.
yeah, yeah. So that would because she's little older than my kids,
Yeah, yeah. But it
so
was interesting. Yeah, but the cartoons of this era that we're talking about now are our kids' cartoons.
yeah, right,
Not only were more available, but they
yeah.
seem to be designed more to appeal to both grown-ups watching it with their
Often,
kids and the
often.
kids, like the Animaniacs or like Batman the Animated Series.
Well,
Yeah,
yes. So speaking of the Animaniacs, I asked my wife because I was curious what she would say
yeah,
as to what cartoon she remembers, and she goes, "So she mentioned Pinky and the Brain." I'm like, "No, babe, that I was the one watching Pinky and the Brain because that was before we had kids." So yeah, that was Animaniac stuff. So there were some really cool cartoons in the '80s into the '90s. Animaniacs, the
yeah,
Batman the Animated Series,
yeah. Pinky and the Brain.
Superman the Animated Series. Um,
Yeah, outstanding stuff. I mean,
But and I also thought my brother, my brother and sister are 10 years younger than I am. And I remember, so they were watching stuff that like, that's when Voltron was on or
yeah,
the Masters of the Universe. And I also would note, and this is going to, I think, ping on something you're going to mention later, the shows that my brother watched, there were all kinds of toys for it. Transformers, G.I.
yes,
Joe. They were toy delivery mechanisms in ways that were not necessarily entirely the case when we were younger.
yes, that's true. Yeah, in fact, we'll get to that when we talk about the merch at the
Yes.
very end here. Have we lost anything by not having Saturday morning cartoons? I mean, people wax nostalgically about
Yeah.
them, but have we lost anything by not having
You might
that?
have convinced me before I started thinking about this, and as I just didn't remember certain things that, oh yeah, it was cooler when we had that anticipation. But to be totally honest, just the ones that I mentioned and others that I could, the quality of cartoons that my kids had access to were actually quite a bit better than, Jabberjaw and the Grape Ape.
Mhm.
And other, I mean, there's some good stuff. We talked about it, but, I don't know. I don't think that's the case at all. Now, I couldn't tell you what the current state of cartoons is because again, my kids are too old. And, if and when I have grandkids, maybe I'm sure I'll find out and we can have another episode some
Yeah,
point in the future. But I have no sense about what right now is like. Um, but no, I don't think so at all. I think there was a rich panoply of opportunity of really cool cartoons for my kids to watch at least.
yeah. And I would say that it like through today, there is always going to be an appetite for kind of crazy, over the top storytelling in
Sure,
cartoons. I wanted to kind of gratuitously inject K-pop Demon Hunters. I've not seen it,
I'm
but
aware of it, but I
its
haven't. No.
popularity doesn't surprise me. I mean, there's always
Yeah,
like I think a space for that.
sure.
You know, science fiction, fantasy, horror, whatever,
Yeah.
the geek genres thrown into a cartoon with some interesting characters, maybe not having to scratch your head too much about the plot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm gonna say one more thing about Saturday morning as a time frame of the anticipation. I mean, I don't actually. I remember the anticipation of the fall TV season was kind of fun because there was always the
Yes.
possibility of something new. But really, I'm not sure that I miss it. And I kind of like the fact that I get new stuff on a regular rolling basis. Like it just so happens like right now, several shows that we watch are premiering now in
Mhm.
April for some reason. Like Hacks is back, and For All Mankind is back, and John Hamm's
Hooray.
show on Apple TV Plus, which my friends and neighbors. They're all coming back within a relatively
Mhm.
all in like in early April. Cool. I have new things to watch now. So I don't, or the pit starts in January. I don't know that I miss everything starting in September. I mean, it was fun at the time, but I don't know that I miss that at all.
So I will come at this from a slightly different direction. So I think there's so much of the culture that we consume now that sprawls.
It does.
And I said earlier that people said that cartoons would rot your brain, comic books would rot your brain. The cartoons were in a very limited time slot. It's not
Mhm.
like social media, which sprawls, or TV shows sprawl now. They're things are starting and ending all the time. You say that it's not completely random, that there is some localization, to a
Mhm.
particular time frame, for some of the streaming providers, but it definitely sprawls. And I think it then really does beg the question, do people get over entertained just because it's always available? There's always something interesting
Oh,
starting up, and I don't
uh,
necessarily.
well,
I'm
I mean,
sounding very judgmental by saying that, but it's entirely arguable. I think that people can get over entertained in whatever the content is, cartoons or whatever.
sure. I mean, you can, too much of a good thing and all that jazz. I guess part of it is, I mean, I could lament the shared experience of that limited supply created, right?
Hmm.
Like we were all watching Happy Days at whatever
Yes.
time that was, or whatever the case may be. And even now, if one pays attention to TV criticism, and there's often this debate about shows that drop weekly versus shows that drop all at once, and whether the shows that drop weekly at least create some kind of quote unquote water cooler conversation or some
Right.
ability to sort of think about it before the next episode comes out, as opposed to binging the show all at once. I think that things have changed. I don't know that it's good or worse. I think that, you could have, it's true that if you want to watch cartoons on TV or on your computer or on your pad or wherever you're watching them, or watch anything literally 24 hours a day, you can and you couldn't have in 1973.
Hmm.
That's true. Um, um, and it's certainly possible to be oversaturated with stuff and whatever over entertained may or may not mean. So I think we certainly are missing some of the common experiences.
Yes.
Um, but by the same token, I guess same was with news, which is a whole other conversation. But in many ways, I think that the period that we lived through, which is roughly from depending on what we want, maybe from the advent of radio and heavily saturated radio in the 30s and 40s up and then to the end of linear TV, that's the aberration, right?
Hmm.
Human history isn't, we haven't had that common a culture previous. We couldn't.
Right. Right.
Technology didn't exist.
Hmm.
And now we're fragmented again in that sense. So I don't know that. I think it's easy. I'm thinking out loud, so I'm not really necessarily responding to what you said. Because I thought about this in regards to news and many times
Hmm.
because we romanticize, understandably, the period of time. Again, when we were kids, there was like one or two newspapers in a major city. There were three news broadcasts.
Right.
They were not that different, and we did live in a more shared experience, which has lots of advantages. And you can make the same argument about pop culture. Although the downside of that is the more homogenized it is, the less options you get.
Hmm.
So there's that. But I think that that all is the aberration, in my opinion. I mean, it's just not in my opinion. I think it just technically is, and therefore I can't necessarily lament too much something that's kind of hard. You can only make it happen by forcing it to happen right now. You can't. It's not natural to force us all to watch the same thing every night, right? It's just
Hmm.
you'd have to manufacture it. So I don't. I guess I don't worry about it that much.
Yeah. Well,
And
I
that
mean,
was my ancient digression.
well, I mean, I wouldn't trade this, like
Right.
we couldn't do this podcast without
Right.
having highly available content.
Correct. Yeah.
Like we had to track down all these cartoons,
Right.
and we were able to do so, and
Correct.
that's fantastic. I
Yes.
wouldn't trade that for the world. I think you're right about the common culture being a little bit of a casualty.
Hmm.
I think also what I meant by over entertain, I didn't really kind of define that, obviously, was that I think that it's easier for us to get distracted by things we might not otherwise watch. So I like how the streaming providers will advertise their own offerings before you watch the thing that you want to watch because they're
Hmm.
saying, "Hey, stay here, keep your eyeballs peeled on
Sure.
for all the content that we can give you." I don't know.
The networks did that in 1975,
Oh
though.
yeah, of course they did. Yeah, so maybe I'm kvetching about something that I shouldn't be. I don't know.
I mean, it's I don't know. It's a mixed bag all the way around. I mean, I mean, I can say this. This is true. While I read more than I suppose many people do, maybe most people, I'd read more if there was less TV to watch.
Yes.
I might write more if there's more less TV. I mean, but that's I don't know how I fix that problem. It is there is only so many hours in the day, and it's sometimes there is a path of least resistance, and sometimes again I might rewatch something. One thing that's true, right? As we pontificate, since I can rewatch something that I like, I
Hmm.
might rewatch something that I like rather than watching something new. That's a
That's
pitfall of all of
entirely,
this.
yeah, that's entirely true.
But I can also I've reread books. I mean, I've read The Lord of the Rings how many times when I could have read something else. I mean, I
That's
don't
true.
know. It's just the way it goes.
Okay. All right. Last question here. Did these cartoons make us geeks?
It's very much a chicken the egg argument. I think it certainly helped reinforce it, right?
Hmm.
I, I don't know if it made us geeks, but it certainly helped reinforce our geekery. There's a lot of geekery, even in the cartoons that weren't necessarily designed to be geeky cartoons. Like I mentioned in passing, do you remember Jabberjaw? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
It's kind of a Scooby-Doo-esque. It's in an underwater city. It's around a band and the shark. It's kind of futuristic. It's not necessarily Atlantis, but there's geek stuff in that. That was in the mid 70s. Or Josie and the
Okay.
Pussycats in Outer
Oh,
Space.
definitely Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space. Yes.
That, or Hong Kong Phooey. And these are like dumb cartoons, but they all have this sort of
Yeah,
geek element to them, right?
that's true. That's true.
So even Scooby-Doo has geek elements to it, even though it's just the middling kids and whatnot. But
Yeah,
so it's
it's just hard for me to kind of tell what the influence was. I mean, they certainly had an influence, but I don't think that necessarily, as you said, that my taste for superheroes or science fiction or whatever was created by these shows. I don't think that was the
yeah.
case.
But as I think about my own bio, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
two, and I repeat myself, but the two shows as a kid that I
Hmm.
think were the most important to me were Speed Racer and Star Trek, the original series. Now,
Yeah.
I think I fell in love with them because it scratched some itch that I had, not
Yeah.
because they forced me to love them, right?
Hmm.
So it's just how his taste formed. I don't know, man.
Yeah. It
I'm
felt
sure
more
there's some
like what.
psychologists out there could tell me, but
Well, like in science fiction, like we're both kids of the space age, so
yes, that's part of it.
that was certainly an influence on us. And I think where something like the cartoons or Star Trek or whatever may have amplified that
Sure.
urge was saying, well, here it is solidified what where your imagination can take you, and wow, it can take you in places that you never would have expected.
Yeah,
Like
it's
Mr.
funny.
Spock as a character, right? That's
Sure.
not something me as a kid would have come up with, but like when I
No.
first, was watching Star Trek, like, wow, that's fascinating, to use a word.
Just some random word.
I think too, it's interesting that you encountered the Japanese cartoons, which had this long form
Yes.
storytelling style that I didn't, and
Right.
I don't know, maybe that's part of why I like short stories so much. I don't know,
That's funny. That's true.
but that's
That's
a
true.
stretch. I mean, again, it's really hard to trace what the influences are.
Right. I mean, I don't, but why was it? I don't have a good answer, right? Because I
Hmm.
there were a lot of westerns and reruns when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I watched some of them, but none of them grabbed my attention. The one that probably grabbed my attention the most was the Lone Ranger, and that's because to me, it had a superhero element to it, right?
yeah,
Because anyway,
not the
but
Wild Wild West.
I don't know that I know I saw it, but I don't remember. I don't know if it was
Okay,
again. It's all the exigencies of syndicated reruns in the 1970s.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that was obviously the one that had the most science fiction elements in
I'm sorry. I was just thinking how
what?
exciting a book title would be: "The Exigencies of Syndication in the 1970s."
uh, colon,
Colon, yeah, a comparative
colon,
study. Yeah, yeah,
an annotated bibliography.
absolutely.
Oh man. All right. So before we get into our usual wrap-up questions here, we always talk about what merch did we have, what merch we didn't have. So I was doing research on the merch. Like I wanted to know,
Yes.
were there Herculoids toys at the time that I just never saw because I didn't have any, or other Herculoids merchandise? Anyway, there wasn't a lot of merchandise to cut to the chase,
No, there wasn't.
but I did get a flavor of the modern toy market, which I had not, which I had some expectation of. I
Well,
know that they're real
which is the
serious
modern
collectible,
collectible market.
the modern collectible market, but also that there are people over the course of decades who have been producing
Right,
toys based on the shows that we're talking about.
right.
So, were you shocked when I told you how much some of these toys went
Well,
for?
and this is kind of I'm maybe I'm finally slicing language. Yes and no, because I don't, and it all depends on your definition of toys. I feel
Well,
like,
that's an academic answer.
yeah,
Well, there
it
are many
is.
sides to this
Well,
question.
no, but I think these are not toys in the sense they were brought to play with. I think they're collectibles that were meant to put on a shelf or put into a plastic or acrylic box.
Yeah.
So I don't know that because I think that reveal your info. And I have a thought. I have two thoughts. Go ahead
Okay.
and
Well, I'll go through the list and then we'll return
yeah,
with
yeah.
thoughts. So I'll start with Space Ghost, a some uh, figures that were made in 2012, so relatively recent,
Right.
much closer to our current day and age than the 1960s would be to that time. Uh, from a company called Jazzware, so a Space Ghost and Blip. So if you want to get this in its package, which of course is really important to collectors, $94.99. So
Yeah.
that's the low end of what we're going to be talking about. Next up, Space Ghost, Jan and Jace, out of the box, pre-owned. I couldn't find on eBay, outside of, like I was relying a lot on eBay to tell me like when these uh, things were manufactured. That information was usually available, or I'd go search for it. I couldn't figure it out in this case. So the two Jan and Jace figures outside of their box, $149. Macross, these 4.25 inch models of five of the characters, $159. Battle of the Planets, from 2002, two of the characters, 12-inch figures, $248.99.
Yeah.
Starblazers, four figures in the box, $249. Super Friends. We're talking Super Friends here, folks. Zan, Jaina, Wendy, and Marvin, the annoying sidekicks from some company that was making retro action figures long after the show was on. So we're talking about like maybe 15, 20 years ago. $290 for the annoying sidekicks. Johnny Quest, a full set of action figures from the same manufacturer, $399. Super Friends, DC Direct. So these are 6 boxes each. That was an interesting pairing of like a hero and a villain in each box. So
Right.
6 boxes of Superman, Batman, The Flash, blah blah. From 2003, $600. And last on the list, the Herculoids, a complete collection of all the characters in multiple boxes, uh, from 2003, $1,499.
Yeah, well, that's the one I'm hoping I'm getting for my birthday.
I know. Well, you could ask. And the other interesting thing was like when I was looking at eBay for all of these, it tell you like how many people have this in their cart.
Yes.
Two people had the complete Herculoids collection in their cart.
Yeah, that's nuts. So I so my thoughts are this, right? I don't I remember seeing some of this, well, two thoughts. Let me back at what some of this is about my brother's era. Um, and also reflecting on our own era. I remember as a kid wanting certain toys. I'll hold off which ones because you're going to ask the merch question in a minute. And
Okay.
and sort of being even as a kid being mildly surprised that toys didn't exist. Like why wouldn't there's a mark? I mean, this is again maybe I was a weirdo. Like there should be a market for this stuff. Why isn't someone filling the market need? I'm sure it's not how I thought about it, but but then later, right, in the 80s, whether it was the G.I. Joe cartoon, uh, He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, Thundar,
Hmm.
the
Right.
Barbarian, no, whatever it was called. There was a whole bunch of shows, and they all had toy lines, all of them,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So then fast forward a little bit, probably toward the end of my comic collecting, which would have been in the 90s, and maybe even just being in comic shops every once in a while since then, I would see these kinds of toys you're talking about, these kinds of
Hmm.
figurines, collectibles, what do you want to call them? They were always, even when they were they were new, were more expensive than I would expect a quote unquote toy to be. And it was quite clear there were limited runs of this stuff, and they were marketing it toward adults. They're collectibles. They're
Hmm.
not. No
Right.
one's going to go out in the sand pit up at the house and play with their G-Force action figures or their Herculoid $1,500 or whatever they cost at the time. So I wonder if this is a function of just supply and demand, and also people who collect things rather than play with them, for lack of a better word. But I do find it stunning that some of these prices are just outrageous.
Yeah, just absolutely stunning. And there are things I think if you're in love with geek culture,
Hmm.
there are things that you'll definitely embrace, and some things you'll say, that's not for me.
Right,
Like live action role playing was never a thing for me. It just never
right,
never appealed to me. And I do not have so much nostalgia for these cartoons, although
right.
we have expressed some nostalgia in the course of this
Sure.
episode. I do not have so much nostalgia that I would spend that kind of money on an action figure based on one of these cartoons.
No, if they were,
But
I mean,
but
some
God
of the
bless you if
stuff,
that's your
yeah.
thing. Go
I
ahead.
mean, I think that there are probably a handful of things. If they were priced at the same price as a typical toy was priced, I might be tempted to buy. So, by way of example, when the Speed Racer movie came out, however many years ago that it was,
Yeah, the Matthew Fox one.
yeah, I bought, and I have, I don't know where they are. They're nearby, but I can't find them right now. I have a Mach 5, and I have of just a Matchbox car because they produced them, not by Matchbox, but that size car, and a Racer X's yellow race car, whatever it's called,
Hmm.
and because I always wanted those as a child, but they didn't exist, and so
Yes.
30 how many I was in my 30s I think when that movie came out. I bought them and put them on my desk, and I still have them, and but they weren't like $200. They were, I don't know, $3, I don't know, whatever a car cost back then. But they were mass produced, and therefore they weren't crazy expensive. But this all this stuff you're talking about reminds me of the way the sort of attempts, failed attempts by comic books to create collectibles just by mass producing them and making them worthless. In this case,
Yes.
I think they were underproduced, and therefore there's a market for them, I guess. But well.
Yeah, but yowza on the prices that
Yes, agreed, agreed.
these toys, emphasis toys, go for. All right, so let's go to the regular questions. What merch did
Yes.
you have at the time that was based on these cartoons?
So yeah, the closest that I had was and I've mentioned before, I had Mego action figures that were superheroes. Although I at the time did not perceive them as being specifically from the Super Friends.
Hmm.
But that's the closest I can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I had exactly the same answer. I mean, it almost didn't matter if it was a Super Friends or not, but I remembered I had, and
I
it
mean,
probably wasn't because I remember
I
having a
don't.
Green Arrow, and Green
Yeah,
Arrow
yeah.
wasn't in the Super
Well,
Friends.
I had some Marvel ones. I had like the Human Torch. I remember originally getting Batman and Superman for Christmas when I was probably 6, maybe 5, and that's really. I mean, Super Friends may have been on TV at that point, but it was. I don't know that I was aware of it at the
Yeah,
moment. So.
I don't even remember Halloween costumes, to be honest. I'm sure they existed, but I don't remember ever
Yeah,
getting one.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, you could just use a
I
sheet
mean,
for a Gloop or Gleep costume.
sure, that's right.
Always looking for an excuse to use that sound effect.
Who wouldn't? I really, honestly, in some ways, it's kind of bizarre to me, honestly, that there wasn't more merch
Hmm.
to sell to kids. But they really figured it out at some point, man. They figured it out in
Oh
spades.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so the concern originally with cartoons was they were violent or they were a waste of time. They were rotting
Yes.
kids' brains, and then in a couple of decades, it became the commercialism of the cartoons that they were
I
just
mean,
a market generation tool to sell
they
toys.
clearly created characters on that G.I. Joe cartoon just to have action figures to sell.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. They're the same with Transformers.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I also I'll mention. We played for a very short time a board game called BattleTech, and
Yeah.
there was a lawsuit between BattleTech and the company that owned the Robotech property over whether the BattleTech people had stolen designs. And I remember I
Hmm.
had a uh, a giant robot
Right.
figure
Right.
that I'm pretty sure was one of the BattleTech ones that was a copy of a Robotech
I
design.
see. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the only other bit of merch worth mentioning I had in the past. Was there anything that you wished you had?
Oh, I desperately wanted G-Force action figures back in the day. That would have been like
I
the
could see
bomb to
that.
me. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, because that was that was the era of. I'd already had the Mego figures, but that was also the era of Star Wars action figures, and I was in the zone for that at that point in time.
Okay.
Um, so that would have been the thing I think I would have wanted the most as a child. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of dissed the Space Ghost armbands, but those would have been
No,
fun.
it's
Those would have
totally
been
fine.
fun to have, run around the yard and press buttons and
Of
pretend
course. Oh, of course.
to
No, no. I mean,
vaporize things. Okay. My other non-standard wrap-up question, our last question is if you were to give this podcast an 80s style anime name, like Super Dimension Fortress Macross, what would it be?
oh goodness. Well, I forgot to do this. Tell me yours, and I'm going to think about it.
Mine is Mega Geek Nostalgia Duo.
That just sounds like, yeah, a bad translation to Japanese. Yeah, I'll just stick with yours. I remember. I guess I was so focused on making sure I had an impression that I forgot to come up with a name.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us go way back in time to our cartoon watching childhoods.
See you next time.
Well, the Captain Crunch is soggy, and it's time for us to clean up our rooms, so we'd best be off. Thanks again for listening to another exciting episode of Ancient Geeks. Please like and subscribe on the podcast app of your choice. And if you want to reach us directly, you can contact us at someancientgeeks.gmail.com. You'll also find us on Substack at someancientgeek.substack.com and as well on Blue Sky, Reddit, Facebook, and other social media outlets. All content is copyright 2026, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, who you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.
Zuck, the laser ray dragon. Igu, the giant rock ape. Tundro, the tremendous. Bloop and Bleep, the formless, fearless wonders.